We're operating on about 3 hours sleep, which is more than I bet our next guest got last night. Our friend, Governor Scott Walker from the great state of Wisconsin. Wisconsin, Governor. How are you? Great to talk to you, Governor.
I had a Wisconsin night afterwards. I went out and had a beer and some cheese curds. So there's nothing better than
wait a second.
Cheese curds and a cold beer.
Where did you go? Because we were dying for some food. I hadn't eaten since breakfast, and we couldn't even find anywhere to go. And Siri was useless on my iPhone. Where did you go?
We went. Staff found someplace like 15 minutes away, but it was worth it because we got a cold beer, some nice deep fried cheese curds. Nothing says Wisconsin better than that.
Okay. Well, okay. First of all, you got like 8 minutes and 20 seconds, and old Trump got 18 minutes.
For that. Oh, my goodness. I mean, I started tackling something. Although it's quality. It's the quality of time you use it. Obviously, you played the clip there. And I said at one point, come on. I mean, this was all set up to be about, tit for tat with Trump on just about everything out there. The bottom line is people want to talk about real issues. And then I mentioned, America made a mistake back in 2008 when they put an apprentice in the White House, someone who we didn't know who they were or where they were going. We've seen the big mistake that's been. I think there's a cautionary out there that we don't need to send another apprentice out there. We need to send somebody who's actually been tested. If you want to shake Washington up, if you're going to hire, think of all those CEOs on the stage. If they were going to hire someone to take over a company for them, they'd want to hire somebody who'd done a good job taking those kind of challenges on, and that's our case. That's what we've done.
What do you make of CNN's approach here in this debate? Because in my mind, and I was in maybe row 9, it was boiling. I don't know how you could take that up on stage. It was like 100 degrees, and
it was
awful. Horrible. I mean, it was a beautiful setting, but it was too hot in there. So you're standing up there, and the questions are, well, Donald Trump said, and 2 weeks ago Donald Trump did, and he said, and he remarked, or it was Scott, Governor Walker, John Kasich said this. What do you? I didn't understand that whole approach to the debate. I thought it was a mishmash of questions, mostly designed to make Republicans look bad, in my view.
Well, it was like a cage match. It was basically saying, okay, throw out something, and the two of you got to go attack each other on this, as opposed to saying, what's your plan for healthcare? What's your plan for the economy? What's your plan for energy independence? What's your plan? And sure, I have no problem people probing. It's why I go on the shows like yours. I want people to push me hard on the issues that I have. But the format was bizarre. I was talking to a number of the candidates afterwards. Dr. Carson and I were talking. It was just an unusual format. But I think it was driven by ratings. I think they wanted to get as many tit-for-tats in with Trump, and that's what they did. And in the end, I think it's a disservice to the American people. They want to hear where you stand on the issues. I mean, I would have loved to talk more about our plan, for example, to get rid of Obamacare on day one. We've actually got a plan, and it starts by ordering Congress to live by the same rules as everybody else and truly repealing Obamacare. Well, we got a little bit of that in there, but I hope in the upcoming debates there'll be more talk about that. There'll be more talk about how do we tap into our energy supplies to grow the economy, about what we do to get the federal government out of our lives and put it back in the states, and more importantly, back in our hands. There's a lot we could be talking about that I hope will come up.
Governor, I think one of the and again, it plays differently in the room than it plays when you're at home watching it on television. But I think what's happening here is that even though Trump doesn't have a lot of specifics, for some reason it's coming down to which guy doesn't owe anyone anything and is going to just rip through Washington and root out the corruption and build the country back. And I was elbowing my friend sitting next to me going, oh my gosh, Trump is using the same lines over and over and over again. I'm going to light myself on fire. I mean, I was just beside myself. And you had a lot of specifics. Carly did, Cruz, Jeb Bush to some extent. But what's going on out there? Because in the polls, Trump is still dominating. In some of the Insta polls, we'll see if they're accurate, Trump is still dominating. But what's that all about? I mean, you do have a record.
I think you just nailed the answer to that, and that is when you look at that field. I mean, obviously, I'm making the case for myself, but I think I hope the takeaway most people had is, even as obnoxious as some of the questions were, it's a strong field. There are a number of really qualified, top-notch, good conservatives up there who had good, positive, specific ideas. I'm hoping to lay out even more of those in the future, having the chance to do that, as we will, not just in debates, but otherwise. But I think the challenge is voters look at that field. I hear that in Iowa. Just the other day when I was in Iowa here and elsewhere, people say, I like you. I like one or two others out there, and I don't know where these Trump supporters are coming from. I think that the challenge is there's such a good, strong field of conservatives out there that it kind of spreads the vote around. And the sooner we can get more crystallizing that there's a contrast out there, the better. That's part of the reason why I laid it out early on. I kind of set the stage, if you will, by pointing out, we've had an apprentice that in many ways this is not unlike 2008 when people were kind of gravitated towards at least.
No, but you know what I'd say to that,
we thought
Governor?
were good.
Governor, I love you, but you know what I'd say to that? If I were on stage and you said that, I would have said, well, are you talking about a 2-term Democrat president who got a lot of Democrat stuff done? Well, that actually worked for the Democrats. You know what I mean? It's like Trump doesn't have but I see what you're saying, but I could have come back at you and said, well, yeah, Barack Obama, it's a disaster for us, but the Democrats, they love him. And he can still get thousands of people to show up at an event. So, look, I hear what you're saying, and I was very frustrated last night. I wanted to hear more from you. Huckabee got short shrift. I thought he said this, and what's your reaction to him? Or she said this, and what? I just think people tune it out. So I just think people tune it out.
Laura, my son had an interesting observation. He said afterwards, he said, Dad, he pointed out to us that the reason why the questions were driven a certain way is the more Republicans had attacked other Republicans, the more likely they were to get a question. And the irony is I've spent most of my time in the last couple of months of this campaign talking about Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and going after, and vice versa. They've actually spent a majority of time, I think, going after me as opposed to most of the other Republicans. Why? Because that's where our focus is. That's our real opponents. Those are the people we need to make sure we win against, because Lord help us if Hillary Clinton is elected president of the United States.
Do you think
there was barely a mention of anything about Hillary Clinton last night?
No, of course not. I'm not going to do that. I mean, I believe most of the questions, they were designed for ratings, but a lot of them were designed to make Republicans look bad. I'm sorry. And all of us sitting around in row 9 were basically in agreement on that. What do you think about this refugee crisis in Europe? I can't believe that didn't even get raised last night by anybody. None of you, and none of the questions. But
I thought they were headed there in one question, but then they jumped off of it again. Now well, one, obviously, I just as a human being feel horrible about the people and individuals involved with this. But this is just a typical example of this president and really of the Obama-Clinton doctrine not working. And that is they created this mess when the president drew a red line in the sand and allowed it to be crossed. They created this mess when they pulled out of Iraq too early without having a clear plan and allowed a vacuum to be created that ISIS has filled out there.
But my question is, though, Governor, we've heard that from you, and I understand those points, but do you think we should be taking in 10,000 refugees, overwhelmingly Muslim?
No, that's my point I was getting at is we should not be, because that's addressing the symptoms and not the ultimate problem. And by the way, the national media largely overlooks this when they act as though we're doing nothing. We've taken in the past year some 70,000 refugees and permanently settled them, many of whom are from Syria. We've spent $4 billion, that's billion with a B, $4 billion on humanitarian aid to help with the Syrian crisis out there. America has stepped up big time on this. But the last thing we should be doing is just taking a whole nother wave for two reasons. One, because we're not addressing the problem, and the problem is both ISIS and Assad, which we need to step up and actually deal with. But two, with this massive influx of people coming in without a clear policy, how can the President of the United States not be absolutely certain that some of those people coming in through the refugees aren't going to be aligned with ISIS or Al-Qaeda or with other groups out there? The last thing we need is a whole new wave of people coming in that we can't guarantee are not terrorists.
Well, refugees, by definition, are supposed to be people who can be returned home. That means the best thing to do is to keep them in places close to their homeland where they then can be returned if they're true refugees. The Hungarian prime minister says overwhelmingly these are economic migrants who just want to go to the EU because there are better job opportunities, better benefits. And so this is their chance because Merkel says we'll take in 800,000. So, of course, they rush the border. And so I was just stunned that this wasn't even raised. And you might have not have heard this because it happened yesterday, Governor. But the White House has now said that they could take as many as 100,000 total refugees by the fiscal year 2017. That's what we're on track to do. So many more than 10,000, maybe totaling as many as 30,000, which I predicted. I don't think 10,000 is going to be the number. But I can't believe our Congress has said literally almost nothing about this. Report yesterday, real median income, Governor Walker, of households maintained by foreign-born persons increased by 4.3% between 2013 and 2014. But check it out. In contrast, the median income, according to the Census Bureau, of households maintained by native-born people declined 2.3%. In my mind, that paints the picture of the middle-class discontent. Everybody seems to get the bennies. Everybody seems to get the recovery, except the native-born working people in that middle-income level in this country.
Well, under this president, they just keep getting clobbered over and over again. And you've got to, this is a series of policies, part of which he did after the last year's election when he pushed for changes in immigration there, but part of it's even in rural areas, which is overwhelmingly rural areas are doing not as well as the rest of the country in terms of recovery. It's a whole series of things. It's even things as simple as Dodd-Frank, which are just clobbering community banks, which typically have helped smaller rural areas as well. It's a whole series of things. It's the growth of Washington. It's the policies of this administration. We need leaders who are going to truly step up and support America's working families. And it's why, as I've talked about immigration, that's all the more reason why, to me, when you talk about legal immigration, we should have it tied into what is the impact on American working families and their wages in a way that will truly improve the American economy. And even some of the people who say they're against amnesty and they want to secure the border and enforce the laws and all the things that I and others say, there are some on that stage who are pretty solid-sounding conservatives who want to open the door towards more legal immigration.
Ted Cruz.
We need to make
Ted
sure
Cruz and Marco Rubio.
And their families are. We need to make sure American workers and their families are doing well.
Governor, before we let you go, there was a lot of back and forth about speaking Spanish and so forth, and I don't need to play the soundbite, but Marco Rubio basically said, look, if it's better for me to speak in Spanish than these Spanish speakers to be hearing it through a translation on Spanish media. I got a lot of emails and comments on that from my listeners. Aren't we supposed to be a country where English is the national language, even if it's not officially the national language, where that's the one of the overriding things that unifies us? And it seems to be now it's almost an afterthought to speak English, and speaking Spanish gives you the upper hand in this election.
Well, the bizarre thing is we're a nation of immigrants, got many great traditions over the years. Many great people have come from all over the world. But what was the one thing is they assimilated. They kept their traditions for sure. Many have. I've got German and Irish and Scottish and Welsh ancestors. But even on the German side, I still remember my great-great-grandparents speaking some German. But when they were around at public events, when they were at public functions, they were speaking English out here, and they were immersed in the American customs out there. And this is the strength of the melting pot, is there's got to be common bonds. And, particularly as we think about Independence Day, one of those common bonds should be not just what languages we speak, but the common essence of believing in the U.S. Constitution and actually having elected officials that support it. So I hope people remember that, particularly today as we celebrate Constitution Day.
It's great to have you on. Governor Scott Walker, congrats. Great night last night. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Laura.
All right, we'll take a break, close out this hour. Don't go away.